Hey guys, Commander Jaime here, and I'm bringing you a Maelstrom deck profile. As you saw from the description, it is a 12 crit variant of it. As much crazy as that sounds for an Aqua Force deck profile, it's kind of like we had to branch out to these kind of crazy ideas so that way we can become competitively viable. And we just found out that GBT 12 won't have Aqua Force in it, and so we're probably going to be without any support for a good while. So, how to make Maelstrom great again, right? So the idea, there's two ideas. I incorporated with my friend Eduardo Gonzalez, and the idea was to mix Tava's units into it, where you basically become more of a stride focused deck, and that way you'll be striding Commander Thavas and Whaley Thavas for the first couple of stride turns consistently. And with that, you're able to use cards like Adelaide, Petros, and Melania, just to name a few. And then that would help whatever Maelstrom kind of lacked in, where Adelaide is a restander by herself, Melania gives you draw power, and you got Petros to give you another attack and make Wailing Thavas an even bigger attack on the Wailing Thavas turns. And it could be a temporary booster or attacker, just depends. If you need to get to the fourth battle, that Petros helps in that regard as well. So that was one idea. The second idea was somebody that mentioned in the Vanguardians Facebook group that what decks were going to be compatible, not compatible, were going to be viable after GBT09. And one person mentioned that there's a 12 crit Maelstrom variant. And I thought I was just like, whoa, that's kind of different. And at the time, 12 crit and Aqua Force deck to me was kind of crazy talk, because Malika is really important. She helps you get your combo pieces and all that stuff. And I've used to playing 6 crit, 6 draw in my other variants of Aqua Force, so the 12 crit idea was something new to me. And after practicing with Maelstrom stuff and the 12 crits in the lineup, it actually proved to be very helpful in it. And I noticed that sometimes that when you can't make a feel, because Maelstrom in itself I feel is much more feel reliant than Tavas and any other Aqua Force variant, helped a lot, and it can help push you the early game to make it in your first stride and your second stride deadly. And I think that's what Maelstrom needed. And I think compared to Thavas, I don't think it can last as long, because it doesn't have that much of like an advantage engine, because it doesn't really have anything that Thavas has. You know, we're relying on Melania to get our draws in this deck build, as for an example. So with those two ideas in combined, let's get into it. So our starter is Marios. He is the spirit of the Maelstrom starters, essentially. So what he does is that when you attack and you hit, and it's the third wave or more, you could just check the top 5 for a grade 3 and add it to your hand. And so this is basically a way to get you advantage, because we're not playing, you know, any draw triggers. So that helps. And he's a constant booster too, so having that constant pressure gives your opponent to think, do I really want to take this Vanguard attack? Because it could potentially plus you a card. And it's not GB restricted, so you can use this whenever you achieve the third battle or more. So you could do that grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. But I typically like to go off at least grade 2 and grade 3 ride, so that helps. And so with that in mind, the triggers. Probably one of the most important things about it. So like I said, we're playing 12 crits. Let's see. Yep. And for the new heals as well. So the new heal trigger is really good in this variant, where if you need to ditch a grade 1 that you don't need, you can ditch it, so you can potentially get a different combo piece for next turn, and it helps filter your hand. So that's help, and it's much appreciated. We got the Spina, which Maelstrom has access to. What she does is when she boosts the Vanguard, and it is the 4th battle or more, your opponent can't guard with grade 0s from their hand, which is really good with Wailing Thavas. So Wailing Thavas lets basically makes your opponent not guard with grade 1s, but with this gives you an extra guard restriction on top of it, so making him very hard to guard and making your opponent hard guard effectively. And then with Petros, of course, he is the Thavas Grit, where he goes into Soul and +5, giving you that extra power that you need for that turn, and he's just a unit that you could just throw down, attack, and then swoop into Soul, and not really lose any hand advantage with it. And it builds up Soul. because there are some cards in here that they use soul, and Maelstrom doesn't really have a good way of generating soul, so that comes into play. And then Supersonic Sailor, because he unflips and he goes into soul, so that helps with you two resources there. And yeah, those are the 12 crits that I decided to play, and honestly I think they're pretty solid. So what's nice about it too is that when you're facing the control matchup like Link Joker and Kagero, you pretty much are safe to like just have the Vanguard attacking, and even if they're like at 2 or 3 damage, you can like double crit them more than often enough that they get behind, and that gives you the edge to, when you're ready to throw down your units, you can just go for the finish. Grade 3s. For the Break Ride. Break Ride is really nice. So if I'm going first and I ride to grade 3, he has the nifty ability where on the 3rd battle or more, if he hits, you get to search up to a Maelstrom card from your deck and add it to your hand, of course. So what's nice about that, if you pair it up with Marios over here, you get to basically potentially +2 off of that. And it's nice because you can throw down cards like Rascal Sweeper and like Gregoris as a 12k attacker, and you have your 4 attacks lined up, and with that you can throw down your triggers on top of another column like Gregoris, so you can apply even more pressure. So you get an advantage and applying pressure on your opponent as soon as you ride to grade 3, which is good. So Karma Y and 2 Glory Y. I messed with the ratios before. Glory has a nice interaction with the Maelstrom Break Ride where you basically have an unguardable attack with the exception of G-Guards. That is very powerful, and when he attacks on the 4th battle or more, he's going to be 28,000 because +10 from here, cross-ridden, so he's 13 base, and then he himself gives +5. So if you pair up with like a booster, you make even another threshold that you pass, making it even harder for your opponent to guard. And you generally only do that play when you know that your opponent doesn't have the heal trigger to use the G-Guard, and you know they just have PGs, or you could always just fall back on striding into Lambros or into Wailing and all those options. Karma is there because he's Limit Break 4, so in the event that you need to actually do a skill at Limit Break 4, he's there. You can either Break Ride or you could just ride him right off the back, depending on your matchup. And what I think he shines in right now in this variant is that he's able to fight against Severed Runner more effectively, because you get the +5 in the crit, and if he doesn't hit, you get to like kill something and draw a card. So you really don't lose any advantage from that play. So being able to have that Limit Break 4 skill is pretty cool. And he also cross rides, so he's 13k base. So in the event that you just need to like ride one of these just to be 13k base against multi-attack clans and then just stride, is still beneficial. So that's key. Keep in mind that the Break Ride combo with Glory and the Break Ride requires 2 counterblasts, so sometimes that might not be viable and you end up striding. So it just really depends on how you want to evaluate the situation at that point. So grade 2s. So for Tidal, I think Tidal is pretty much a staple in almost every Aqua Forest clan variant, because he does so much for it. You know, he enables the 4th battle, he does so well with the early game, and he helps you even come back from, like, if you're falling behind. A good example is Wailing Taba's turns, where if you're falling behind, you could just call a Tidal and then just get to the 3rd battle like that, and then just attack with Wailing, and you get to retire 2 cards like that. You get pretty much 36k. You're 36k and no grade 1s, and your opponent's just like, I either take it or have to drop a lot of cards for this, and you know, you're kind of coming back into the game that way. So Tidal being also free helps a lot. So, and then with 12 crits in this deck, seeing a crit early on can really can even kill your opponent. So that's always a benefit. And because we're playing Maelstrom, it's the spirit of Maelstrom that we're trying to incorporate here. So we're playing Rascal Sweepers. Rascal Sweeper is basically, he gets +2k if you have a Maelstrom Vanguard, and then his other skill is at the end of the 1st battle, it attack Vanguard. You can swap the column with it basically, and he's a free swapper. He's kind of like a couple dagger. It's just that he's restricted to Maelstrom, so he's not really live until grade 3, but he's free, so give or take. And he's has a nice interaction with some of the cards I've picked in the grade 2s and the grade 1s and in the grade 3s, of course. So that way you have your 11k pokes essentially. And so I play 2 Gregoris because of that very reason. He's a 12k attacker if you have a Blue Storm Vanguard, which Maelstrom has Blue Storm in the name as well. So we have 3 names in going on mixturing. We have Blue Storm, we have Maelstrom, and then we have Thavas. So all these units are working together with this common 3-name thing, whatever you want to call it. So he's a perfect target to swap with Rascal Sweeper, and then if you have a 7k booster and you have a Blue Storm Vanguard when you're on grade 2, he becomes a 19k column, which is good against their grade 2 9k Vanguards. So that's worth to note. So when you ride a grade 3, I typically like have him and a 7k booster, and then have a Rascal Sweeper and another card to like swap with. So you have 1 swap, 2, then your Maelstrom Vanguard attacks, and then you can stack all the triggers on Gregoris, and you bam, 19, and then if you have any triggers, even better. So then the other options here I decided to incorporate was Adelaide and High Tide Sniper. These are 2 cards that I generally don't want to see in the early game, so I play them pretty much at low numbers. And Adelaide, to be honest, only works when you're on Thavas, so it does not work when you're like on a Lambros stride. So there are times where you do go Lambros, and having more Adelaides could help you, not help you, could conflict with your plays. So I kind of keep it at 1. You may go up to 2 if you want, it's really up to you, or you can play something else. But she's there for the utility of being able to restand by herself, and she helps with the control matchup if you need her to, because generally you're going to be on Thavas strides anytime, anyway, so she's MVP in those matchups too. And then High Tide is pretty much generic in the sense where he can be used in Lambros turns, Commander, and Wailing Thavas turns. And even after you break right and all that, he's still a nice beat stick. So it's High Tide's really nice. And he also, both of these are good targets to swap, because she's 11k and she can hit again. She restands, and then he becomes a 19k by himself. So he hits over the 16k mark that usually Vanguards get at when they damage stack a trigger. So that's always good. So, grade 1s. Grade 1s are pretty much how I ended up with playtesting and how the ratios ended up. For example, I was playing 4 Melania at first, but I cut it down to 3 because she is a Thavas unit, and she doesn't really help when you're not on Thavas strides. So, you know, Lambros being the prime example. And so, being able to see her enough, but not too early, helps. So, I made room from different cards, as you can see over here. But, nonetheless, Melania is there for the extra draw, which Maelstrom needs, especially in this build, because we're only playing 12 crit. And it has resist, so you could put her behind a a Tidal Assault on your like early turns against Kagero, and if they have like a Neo Flame, they can't kill it. So that helps too in that regard. We're playing the Blue Storm PG. She is really nice because she serves as a booster, and she bounces by just Soul Blasting and being the 3rd battle or more that she boosted. So it's really nice, especially, again, since we don't have any draw triggers or any superior co-engine that we have, so it helps with any booster that we want to use, that kind of thing. Key note, she looks for the Blue Storm name. So if you have a grade 1 or a grade 2 with a Blue Storm name, you could actually use her that early on and bounce back, just to apply more pressure if you want. So that was another neat thing to note. Then we have 3 Nikki. Striding, because we want to stride, like I said, it's a more stride focused deck. I was able to cut it down to 3. I was playing it at 4, and I felt like it was enough with 8 grade 3s and 3 of these guys. So we have 11 ways to stride with 1 card, and of course we have Mario's over here giving us potentially more grade 3s to either stride with or break red and so on, for like column swaps for having 11k attackers. So it just depends how your hand looks, and this helps out with striding. And yep, that's why I played. And then these 2 cards, 2 of her and 1 of her. Why? Data is really nice. She is also Maelstrom support in the sense that she's a 9k attacker by herself, and then her second skill on the wave second time only, she gets an additional +3. So that battle, she's a 12k. So it works really well with Rascal Sweeper, where he goes first and then she goes second, and then you can go with your Vanguard with either the Maelstrom break ride or Wailing, or you can just have another column and then get to the 4th battle. So she's nice with that. And she's not generation break lock, so you can do this on your grade 3 turn. My Sailor is there because she's basically a high tide, and she's really appreciated. When you use Rascal Sweeper, you can like swap with her, and she becomes a 17k attacker, so it hits nice numbers. And it's pretty much the same amount of numbers that you would hit with high tide, and it only matters if you're facing like a 13k Vanguard where there's the difference. You can swap this for another unit. You can use Stacia if you want, so you could probably mix with the ratios if that's your pick of choice. But I found myself with Rascal Sweeper, you rather like swap with other units that actually are better targets than Stacia, because Stacia you want her to be in a back row. So that was the main deck. Into the strides. Or just do the strides first. So 4 Commander, 2 Wailing, 4 Lambros, 1 GB8, and 1 Aristotle. So like I said, the main point is you want to be on a Thavas stride, so you have the Thavas name, and they're really very beneficial. He helps really on the first stride turn, and you can do a lot of pokes and a lot of attacks. You can make cards like Tidal Assault bigger and attack more than once and stack crits, and you could even kill them on first stride if you like hit a crit trigger beforehand, or if you even hit a crit on his strive check, which is kind of devastating. And then of course you have Wailing here, where you can take advantage of the Spina, combo off with him, and they can't guard with grade 1s or 0s, so they have to guard with grade 2s and of course generation guard. And so he synergizes very well with the Maelstrom strategy, where typically you go to the 4th battle, and as your final attack is the Vanguard, he gets so big that he makes it worth it, you know. And the other guy that makes it worth it is Lambros, and Lambros gives you extra attacks, and of course you can abuse Tidal with plus 10k and other units, and even cards like your grade 3s are 21k beat stick still, so that's really something. And he's still relevant, so he's kind of one of your finishers. Well, he is your finisher, and then of course Wailing is your finisher. So Lambros also benefits with more crit, and so that way your drive check, you can stack crits on both columns essentially, and if they're 4 damage or something like that, they have to guard both attacks after Lambros, so you can really make your opponent drop more cards or they just lose. So with Last Twister Dragon as the GB8, he's really good in this deck because you have more wave targets. The Break Ride as a wave target, the grade 1 of course, and you got my Sailor, you got, heck, even the PG is like a wave unit, so she's really helpful in that too. And then you got Melania as well, so these chicks are hitting like 16k 17k marks by themselves, so you got good amount of targets to make them actually viable and actually a finisher too when you're a GB8. The other one is Aristotle. You can switch this with Sibriz or another card like Tidal Bore. It's really your preference, but he's there for like if you really need to kill something on the first stride. Other than that, he's pretty much not used. So the other guys are much more important, and like I said, your Thavas strides are your MVPs in your success. And then finally the G-Guards. We have Ice Barrier. Ice Barrier is so nice, especially against decks that like to attack Vanguard with the first battle, so you get that instant 25k shield for free, or in the 4th battle or more, you just get another his go off. And I pair it off with the new Fighters Collection G-Guard, Ionis, and if you have a field, it gets +5 for every unit, and of course they get the resist and the cannot be hit clause, but he makes it so that by you having a field, you don't get punished. So that's crucial in matchups against like the Shadow Paladin matchup, where you have Phantom Blast or Diablo being a thing, and you can literally not retire anything, and you just G-Guard, and this gets big enough to become like a 3-pass or no pass in that sense. And of course he gets you closer to GB8. And then of course the 2 Craze. I don't play Floatia because she's kinda so I decided to play these guys. Him because you want to save cards, especially if you're G-Guarding for the first time and you don't have GB on, you can use him. So he saves like titles, he saves high tides, and so on. You got Screw because if you don't have any regards, Ionis isn't worth it. And then if you're not in the battle restrictions from this guy, he's still a 25k shield. And of course Marios is going to give you grade 3s, so you can ditch the grade 3s to get the 10k shield value out of them. so that helps. So that's why I play these guys. And then, so to sum it up, it's a fun deck. I really like it. It gives it like the spirit of Maelstrom that it used to be, and of course it has some new gimmicky things where you can like break red and do unguardable attack in a sense. And of course, being 12 crit, you can really apply pressure and take advantage of it with cards like Tidal and Nautilus. And it's actually kind of viable, where you can take this to locals and you have a decent chance of actually topping with it, I think, as long as you practice with it and know how to play and play certain cards at the right time. With Aqua Force, you're already being careful of what you play every turn, because what you play is deliberate, because you could lose it and that's pretty much gone forever. So you want to be careful, you want to be smart, and of course you want to apply the pressure early on as you can and keep applying it, so that way it grants you to victory. And so, yep, that's my Maelstrom deck profile. And hope you guys enjoyed it. And do comment, like, subscribe, and share. Let me know in the comments if you guys have any other suggestions or different strategies for this build to potentially take on a different form. So, peace out, guys. See ya.